Joseph L. White, known as the father of black psychology, for exposing the implicit whiteness in the field of psychology, including education, research, and professional training, was a clinical psychologist, professor, and researcher who challenged the American Psychological Association, APA, by helping to found the Association of Black Psychologists, ABP, in 1968 within its ranks. White worked closely with colleagues to build a bibliography of works on black psychology, but his 1970 article for Ebony magazine, Toward a Black Psychology, had the most impact. It confronted the 78-year-old APA on its history of defining blacks as deviant and lacking in intelligence. His challenge took White to the forefront of the movement for a cross-cultural psychology which focuses on the interrelationship between culture and psychological processes. Charles Henry Turner was the first African-American psychologist and the first African-American comparative behavior psychologist. Turner was born on February 3, 1867, in Cincinnati, Ohio. Turner, who wanted to help young African Americans, took a position as a high school teacher in St. Louis, Missouri. Turner's research influenced contemporary ideas about entomology. The scientist was able to prove that insects can distinguish different pitches and that cockroaches can learn by trial and error. The term, Turner's circling, was named after him when he discovered that ants find their way back to their nest in a circular pattern. Although Turner's research centered on insects, he left behind a book of poetry and a partly finished book of nature stories for children. Gloria Twine Chisum, born in Muskogee, Oklahoma, in 1930, she is primarily known as an experimental psychologist. She developing protective eyewear for pilots in extreme conditions. She was the manager of the Life Sciences Research Group for the U.S. Navy. She later headed of the Environmental Physiology Research Team at the U.S. Naval Air Development Center in Warminster, Pennsylvania. Alvin Poussaint was born in East Harlem in New York City on May 15, 1934. Poussaint completed his postgraduate training at the University of California at Los Angeles, UCLA, Neuropsychiatric Institute, where he served as the chief resident in psychology from 1964 to 1965. Between 1965 and 1967, Poussaint was the Southern Field Director of the Medical Committee for Human Rights in Jackson, Mississippi. With this organization, Poussaint provided health care to civil rights workers and also worked on the desegregation of health care facilities throughout the South. After leaving Mississippi, he became an assistant professor at Tufts University Medical School. Dr. Poussaint's research interests include studies on the nature of grief, self-esteem, parenting, violence, and the social adaptation of children of interracial marriages. His first book, Why Blacks Kill Blacks, 1972, explores the effects of white racism on black psychological development. He has also co-authored two other books, Raising Black Children and Lay My Burden Down, as well as numerous articles in professional journals. From 1984 to 1993, Dr. Poussaint was the consultant for two popular television series, The Cosby Show and A Different World. Dr. Carolyn L. Robertson Payton was born on May 13, 1925, in Norfolk, Virginia. She was the first African American and the first woman to become the director of the U.S. Peace Corps. She was appointed in 1977 by U.S. President Jimmy Carter. Payton then attended the University of Wisconsin, where her tuition and other expenses were paid by the state of Virginia as part of the state's policy of sending black graduate students to out-of-state institutions rather than allowing them to receive advanced degrees at the state's universities. Payton is best known, however, for her career contribution as the director of the Howard University Counseling Service, HUCS, from 1970 to 1977, and later as Dean of Counseling and Career Development from 1979 until her retirement in 1995. While at Howard, She led the development of clinical material focused on providing counseling and psychotherapy to African American men and women. The Howard program was eventually adopted by the American Psychological Association, APA. Dr. Payton was also a pioneer in the use of group therapy techniques specifically for African American clients. William H. Grier was a psychiatrist who published the groundbreaking book, Black Rage, along with fellow psychiatrist Price M. COBBS, in 1968. Published in the aftermath of the assassination of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and subsequent outburst of race riots, the book sought to explain the cause of black anger as the psychological consequence of racism and white oppression. Because of its timely publication, and its then novel idea of analyzing the Negro problem not by treating African Americans as an undifferentiated mass, but through psychoanalysis, the book received critical acclaim. It became a public phenomenon and led to an ABC TV special in 1969 titled, To Be Black. JOYCELYN Elders, the former U.S. Surgeon General, was born August 13, 1933. Upon graduating from college in 1952, Elders enlisted in the Army and became a physical therapist. After ending her military career in 1956 and enrolling in medical school, Elders returned home and protested against local segregation. In 1957, she refused to park in the back of a drive-in theater. By 1963, Elders completed her residency and became chief pediatric resident at the University of Arkansas Medical Center. In 1987, Arkansas Governor Bill Clinton appointed Elders as the head of the state's health department. Upon appointment, she became the first female and African American to be director of the Department of Health in Arkansas. During this period, she increased Arkansas school clinics and expanded sex education. Largely due to Elders' lobbying, the Arkansas State Legislature mandated a kindergarten through 12th grade course curriculum encompassing not only sex education, but instruction in hygiene, substance abuse prevention. During her tenure, the Arkansas teenage pregnancy rate fell below the national rate. Dr. Umar Abdullah Johnson. Umar Abdullah Johnson is a doctor of clinical psychology, nationally certified school psychologist, certified K-12 school principal, and political scientist. He is an expert independent special education evaluator. He trains educators, principals, and mental health technicians on various psychoeducational topics, including ADHD and disruptive behavior disorders. He is an outspoken opponent against the mass psychiatric drugging of black boys in public schools, and the mass diagnosing of black children as mildly mentally retarded and learning disabled. He is also the author of a book entitled The Psychoacademic War Against Black Boys, From Grade School to the Graveyard. Professor Earlise Ward. Earlise Ward conducts community-based clinical research focused on older African American women's mental health. Her research examines their beliefs about mental illness, whether these beliefs may serve as barriers to seeking mental health services, and coping behaviors in response to mental illness. This line of research is geared to develop more culturally appropriate and effective mental health interventions for older African American women. Professor Ward's current research projects have used a life course perspective and the common sense theoretical framework. Shakalia Forbes-Bell. Shakalia Forbes-Bell is the first black woman in the world to be awarded master's degree in psychology of fashion. Shakalia Forbes-Bell is from London, England. Shakalia Forbes-Bell. Shakalia Forbes-Bell is the first black woman in the world to be awarded master's degree in psychology of fashion. Shakalia Forbes-Bell is from London, England. Shakalia Forbes-Bell. Shakalia Forbes-Bell is the first black woman in the world to be awarded master's degree in psychology of fashion. Shakalia Forbes-Bell is from London, England.